Welcome, everybody, to another episode of In the Name of Science Adjacent Parallel Universe.
We just figured there's so much stuff out there and not all of it's enough to fill an entire episode. But, we could have these little side chats where we talk about all this stuff that's happening in the world because it's super interesting, even if there isn't enough content to fill 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Our first story comes from, I don't even know where it comes from. So let's talk about our first story. For several decades, evidence has accumulated that animals turn to medicinal plants to relieve their ailments. Now, I know Eddie turns to medicinal plants to relieve his ailments, but that's specifically to Colorado, correct?
Well, there's a lot of states now that have either medicinal or recreational. Weed, I think this year is on the ballot or in talks. There's movement for it to be taken off of the Schedule 1 list, which is where you have like the hardest drugs
Right.
like cocaine and all that stuff.
Yep,
That's a big deal because taking it off Schedule 1 means you can study it for medicinal purposes, where that's not always the case.
that is true. So anyway, it turns out that animals have been doing this for millennia,
Yeah.
millions of years, and chimpanzees are one of them. And so they swallow these leaves to mechanically clear their gut of parasites. Dolphins, they actually have been found to rub against bacterial corals and sponges to treat skin infections. And recently, a male Sumatran orangutan was observed chewing the leaves of a South Asian plant with antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties, and not just chewing on it, but the thing dabbed the juice on its wound.
Oh, hold on. Let's be honest here. Are you surprised it was an orangutan? They were the smartest motherfuckers in the Planet of the Apes movies.
That is true, but usually the orangutan never talks. So you're always like, if he's that smart, why isn't he talking?
Because he doesn't need to say a whole lot.
Well, if you're from the classification Jacob species, Josh subspecies Gen X, then you would do what my father always told me to do when I was injured and scream at me and just say, rub some dirt on it and shut up.
Yeah, that seems about right. That's when he was home, right? Because you were like latchkey kids.
No, actually, he would be home right around 3:30, 4 o'clock. He was a teacher. So he
Dude,
was done.
For Gen X, that's a big deal because look, I was born in 83, so technically I'm a millennial, but a lot of the Gen X stuff held over. And I could tell you, I was raised by our illegal cable box that descrambled stuff that probably
Well, I
it
was
shouldn't have been.
technically latchkey if you think about it, because I was going, they left at 6:45 in the morning. So it was
Right.
left to me to make my breakfast, get up, go to school. It's amazing that I actually went to school. I mean, it just,
I'm
anyway,
not surprised. You're a nerd. I
yeah.
mean, let's
I'm a
be
rules
real.
follower. Let's just be honest.
Let's be real. You got your trapper keeper, you made your way to school, you took out your little multicolor little mechanical pen.
100% green, red, black, and
No
click.
blue?
No, no, or maybe it was green, red, blue. I don't remember.
Yeah, I forget you grew up in the dark ages of mechanical pen technology. They hadn't
That
figured
is
out how to
true.
make blue yet.
All right, what do you got, Eddie?
All right, so this first one really tickles my space nerd gene because I am a space nerd. So there is a star, it's a binary star, it's called T Corona Borealis. And so the essentially, if you're looking at the Big Dipper, right, those two stars that point over toward the North Star, they also more or less point in that same direction to where this is. It is a binary star system composed of a white dwarf, which is a small white leading star, and a red giant, which is a star that is further along in its life. It's currently fusing helium, possibly even further up the chain. And as a result, it has a cloud of a lot of loose gas in its atmosphere because it doesn't have enough gravity anymore to hold it in, all the way in place and keep it fusing. So this white dwarf star is sucking all of this gas over into its atmosphere. And as a result, as this gas builds up, pressure and gravity on top of that star, every 80 years or so, it creates this enormous explosion. And so the first time we saw it, rather, the last time we saw it was in the 40s, the 1940s, for those of you who are Gen Z, for whom I have to specify what I mean when I say the 40s. Um, And they say that between now and September, when you look up into the sky, into the region where it's supposed to be, at some point between now and then, you'll see what to your naked eye will look like a new star. When you see these things, usually for a short period, they're brighter in the galaxy that they're in than the whole galaxy itself, which gives you an idea of the power of these explosions, because a galaxy can have trillions of stars. Ours does.
See, if nobody was paying attention and they just heard the portions that you talked about that weren't like if you didn't talk about it as a space related thing, all this sounds like is your trip to Taco Bell that would happen once a week. You would get excessive amounts of floating gas. Your the everything would start to
Yep.
crunch inside, and then every
Exactly. Listen, whenever a comparatively smaller object, show up next to this behemoth corporation that is Taco Bell, and I eat one of their steak quesadillas with like 8 packets of any of their hot sauces, I prefer mild, but because I'm the world's whitest Cuban, that's already spicy for me. Yeah, after a little while, there's a massive explosion. It's a type 1A poopernova. Thank you. What do you got?
What do I got? All right. Next up on the list of weird science stuff, there are something called fairy lanterns, which are a type of mysterious parasitic herb that look like something from another planet, quite honestly. They're pint-sized flowers. They have these kind of psychedelic shapes and bright colors, and they've evolved to lure in fungus, gnats, and other insects as pollinators. And in their new
Did you just take one? You take a fairy lantern before the show?
No, but unlike its closest relatives, it has a distinct curve to the cup shape of the flower, and the pollen-bearing structures inside the flower are a brilliant violet.
I can identify with that. Maybe this should be my official flower. I would call it like the dangly Sackus Fernandez.
The danglius cubeus saccius.
So this one, when I was researching stuff I wanted to talk about, I came across this on a website, but you had already told me about it. And so I'm actually stealing it off of your list. I want our viewers to know this was a Josh special because he's probably on the spectrum, which is why he likes dinosaurs.
Okay, first of all, you don't have to be on the spectrum to like dinosaurs. They made a multi-billion-dollar movie franchise off of it. So either everybody's on the spectrum, or you don't have to be on the spectrum to be into dinosaurs.
That's why it's a spectrum. Everybody can be on it.
No, that's true.
So yeah, dinosaurs are one of my Roman empires. So
by the way, I never think of the Roman Empire. I don't know what that's all about.
I think about the Sumerians, like if I'm looking to design a building made out of selenium girders to get some kind of Sumerian death god that can show up in the shape of a giant marshmallow man,
or a Stargate. Everybody needs a good Stargate.
They really do, especially if Richard Kind is there to run it for you.
Oh man, that is a deep cut that only I understand. Maybe Chris would get it. He's a pretty big Stargate fan.
Okay, so this dinosaur that was discovered in the Badlands, which, fun fact, is where we first met Dr. Grant and Ellie Sattler in Jurassic Park, the first one.
Truth.
They call it Loki ceratops because the horns on its head look a lot like the crown piece that Loki of Marvel fame wears. And so they think it's possibly a different species of triceratops. So it's a triceratops, but not like the ones you think of. It's like saying a Chihuahua versus a pit bull. They're both dogs. They're different species of dogs. And so they think that this creature might have used its horns primarily to attract mates, which makes sense because that would have been that era's version of a F-250 with a 12-inch lift, 38-inch really chunky tires, and the fattest truck nuts you've ever seen. And it's also believed that they use these horns to ward off members of their own groups, to try to be like the dominant male. But they think given the horn structure, it's possible this thing might have also had like a very bright, vibrant color palette to its skin, which I think is interesting considering the current leading theory is dinosaurs became birds. And if you look at a parrot, it's a Pride Parade on wings.
Dude, you look at a cassowary, the giant
Yes.
bird out of Australia that's got
Yep.
a claw on the bottom of its foot that literally it can jump up and debowel you.
It's a
And people are like,
velociraptor.
"Here, cute birdie."
Yeah. I mean, that same scene of Jurassic Park in the Badlands when Dr. Grant he takes out the claw and he explains to the kid how it'll disembowel you, and this kid probably went on to become a serial killer after that trauma, but
His eyes were really weird.
like dead doll eyes, you know.
Oh
So
wait, one more thing. By the way, also we were
yeah,
talking about Jaws, and it this past Friday, the 21st, was the 49th anniversary of the premiere of Jaws.
I feel like that's just like the shark saying like I used to be cool. Hey, we get it, bro. You were Jaws. I can go back to the ocean.
And his name was
Bruce.
Bruce. I was gonna say Bart, but it was Bruce. And I got Simpsons on the brain. What's
Okay.
next?
Doctors have found in a clinical study that malaria drugs, specifically, let me see if I pronounce this right, artemisinin. So, after repeated doses, a small group of women with PCOS had lower blood testosterone levels and healthier looking ovaries. So, here's the thing, kind of a shame that it took me so long to learn about this, but through my wife and then later other family members, I've kind of come to realize that in this country, healthcare for women is horrendous. As a man, you show up to a doctor's office with like a hangnail and they'll give you morphine. You know, PCOS is one of those things that women who have it suffer. It's pretty significant, right?
I don't even
And
know what
it's
PCOS is. What is it?
polycystic ovarian.
Yes,
So
something.
you know
I
what I
got
mean.
it.
It's you basically wind up with ovarian cysts, but they're not necessarily always like those ones that are like really bad that you have to operate out.
Right.
But the thing is, it's really common. It's really it's not quite monthly, but it's very frequent. And so now you're dealing with these like the typical stuff you would deal with a menstrual cycle, cramps and you know the bleeding and the loss of iron as a result and all that stuff. This just brings, in addition to other symptoms which are all bad, it brings just a lot of pain.
So there's a
um,
malaria drug out there now that's calming this all down.
right, well, so my understanding from when I read this was that this was kind of like one of those Viagra situations, and I don't mean like sexually, but I mean that Viagra was not made for
Right.
erections. It was made for I think heart treatment, something with the heart. And then they discovered like, hey, these guys all have boners. uh, their hearts are still up, but their work great. So same thing with this, where it's a malaria drug, and then somebody it occurred to somebody to test it for this. But this is a big deal because modern medicine, and when I say modern, I mean like the last 100 150 years, it's never really been geared toward treating like really treating women in a way that is helpful, right? Like to take care of their needs. It's always like, you know, oh, you're hysterical, honey, take a Quaalude. It's literally why Quaaludes were made. But the reason these women were hysterical is because they had cabin fever, because they were looked at as property and made to take care of whole kids all day, couldn't vote, couldn't pay for their own needed to get a signature to have a credit card. It was insane. They were like, imagine being stuck in your early teens the duration of your life. But
If a man was able to get pregnant, there would be abortion clinics on every corner like a CVS.
it's not really something I thought about because it wasn't my experience. I'm not a woman.
Right.
And I have spent a lot of time in dealing with medical problems my whole life. I was a sick kid, and then as an adult, I've had to like take care of myself like everyone else does. But as a man, I'm not exposed to the kinds of prejudices
Yeah.
that women face every day. Going to a lot of times, you're told it's just in your head, even by female doctors. I just thought it was interesting because PCOS is not like a small potatoes, you know, oh, it's like a flesh eating virus that like 2% of the world that will ever get. No, this affects half the population.
And mosquitoes,
Uh,
by the way, number one killer in all of history. More
yeah.
than any war, more than any disease.
So imagine having this drug that not only treats this disease that mosquitoes have killed so many people with, it also treats something that a lot of women deal with that's horrendously bad. Like, this is not a recommendation. I'm not a stock professional, but whatever company makes that drug, might mean you take a look at the stock, you know, make make a little bit of money, you know?
None of these things are promoted by the stock exchange.
I'd also like to say that since Josh is the closest thing to a New Yorker in this conversation, and because he probably knows more about money than I do.
I don't know anything more about money than you do because we're both in the same financial situation.
We're both broke as
All right, moving on. They found ants fossilized, just ants, the bugs, the insects, not like my aunt. It would be amazing if they actually found my aunt fossilized in 100 million year old amber.
That'd be a weird conversation to have.
They found in fossilized in 100 million year old amber have sensory equipment that suggests that they had complex social lives similar to modern day ancestors. I just thought that was fascinating that even though they're, like dinosaurs changed into birds, mammals, little rats and moles changed into humans over all this time. And yet prehistoric ants, pretty much the same as ants today, except maybe bigger.
There's a lot of creatures, alligators, crocodiles, that haven't changed in a long time. Evolution is just a mutation pops up in the next generation, kids born with a slightly different eye color, or the lizard has like some extra horn or something, but those mutations pop up randomly. But if those mutations are helpful, for example, the first bears in the Arctic were not white, but then a white bear was born, that white bear basically disappears against the background of the Arctic ice, and so it can be a kick-ass predator, and as a result it's going to reproduce. And
look,
you're going to get more white bears.
As long as we all get to at some point have superpowers like the X-Men, I'm in.
That's it. We have to fight fire with fire. If nuclear refuse gave them superpowers, it could do the same for me. Citizens, I'm off to the toxic waste dump.
Mayor West, you have lymphoma.
Oh, my.
I gotta find it. I'll put it on the video. It's the best thing ever. I was absolutely hysterical laughing.
It's so stupid. I love it. Oh, all I'm getting at is just evolution does what it does, but if you have evolved in a way where you are just, there's no evolutionary pressure,
right?
You are at your apex of evolution, you're just going to stay there. No one's with alligators or crocodiles unless you're like humans and you're a crazy Floridian and you have weapons, but even then it's not guaranteed success, right?
Nope.
And that's why these creatures have been around so long, relatively unchanged.
Sharks, alligators, certain kinds of snakes, they've all just stayed the exact same. Effective, elusive killing machines.
Yeah, it's incredible. They're apex predators.
Anyway, so do you have any more stories? I think I'm done with mine.
I'll tell you what, let's close it out with like a super quick anecdote. Another story I read. This woman, her car breaks down. It's like -20, -25 degrees wherever she's at. Finds her way to someone's house and is trying to like knock on the door to get in. But for whatever reason, they don't come to the door. I don't remember if they weren't there or if it was like 3 a.m. and they were asleep. And she freezes in front of their house, frozen to the point where her skin was too hard for a syringe to go through it, frozen solid. So when they get her to the hospital, there's not a lot they can do, but they are able to discern that she has a very, very, very slow heartbeat. And so they're like, well, her heart's still beating. We have to try something. So what they do is they thaw her out really slowly, right? Now, the idea of thawing out somebody slowly, mind you, you wouldn't freeze them solid, but when you're doing some kind of a, like somebody is code blue, like they had an accident, their heart stopped, or anything where you need to slow down the person's heartbeat, essentially, right? You bring down their body temperature significantly, and then you raise it very, very slowly, because introducing oxygen back into the bloodstream too quickly is actually damaging,
right,
and can cause death. So that's how they treated this, except obviously this was a very extreme case. And 49 days later, she walked out of the hospital. And so besides being like a really crazy sounding story, the really interesting part is because of this experience, there's now a group of scientists studying what they think this means, which is they think that human beings actually might have the ability to hibernate.
I mean, that's what cryogenics is all about, and like deep
Right.
sleep into space and all of those things.
Right.
So it makes total
But-
sense.
But it's not like, those things have existed for a long time, but it's never been looked at as like a hibernative state, like a bear or like a
Right,
tardigrade or something, right? And the only reason that happened with this woman is because they think she froze so fast that there wasn't enough time for the tissue damage to occur that you would normally associate with freezing to death.
That's crazy.
And so it was just one of those freak occurrences, like those bog bodies, like they're 1,000, 1,500 years old.
Yep.
Bodies don't ever last that long, but in that particular set of circumstances, it was perfect for that to happen. So it might potentially have opened up a new field of science, including, putting people into cryogenic sleep like in Interstellar or Alien.
Basically every space movie. All right, well, look, as we said, we're trying new things. We're going around. We'll continue to do the same kind of videos we've done that you guys like in the past, but we figured change it up every now and then. Hugs and kisses, everybody. We miss you, Chris. Come back. Everybody really misses you. Nobody cares about us.
They really don't. It's the Chris show.
Council of Nerds! Sorry. Whoa, balloons. Do you see the balloons?
I did, yeah.
Council of Nerds! What balloons? I know if you do this, you get a thumbs up. Oh, there it is. You don't get it. I only get it.
No, I don't. It doesn't like me.
Like, subscribe, and share, everybody.
Bye, nerds.
Bye.